The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine conference room of the United Nations complex, its golden light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the sprawling cityscape below. Zara Nightingale adjusted her navy blazer for the third time, her fingers trembling slightly as she reviewed the notes scattered across the mahogany table. First contact protocols, cultural sensitivity guidelines, and emergency procedures, all rendered somewhat inadequate by the unprecedented nature of what was about to unfold. "Breathe, Zara," she whispered to herself, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "You've negotiated with world leaders, arms dealers, and corporate executives. How different could this be?" The answer, she suspected, was very different. Indeed, the communication had arrived 3 days ago, transmitted through channels that Earth's most advanced scientists were still trying to understand. A simple message in perfect English: "Greetings, children of Earth. We come in peace, seeking dialogue with your species. We have much to discuss regarding your world's future security." The response had been immediate and overwhelming. Governments had convened emergency sessions, military leaders had gone to high alert, and the scientific community had erupted in a frenzy of excitement and terror. But somehow, through the chaos, Zara had found herself selected as humanity's primary diplomatic representative. For this historic encounter, Representative Nightingale, a voice called from the doorway. "They're ready for you." Zara nodded, gathering her materials and walking toward the adjoining chamber, where humanity would meet its first confirmed extraterrestrial visitor. The room had been specially prepared for the occasion: neutral colors, comfortable seating, and advanced recording equipment discreetly positioned to capture every moment of this historic event. As she entered, her breath caught in her throat. The being standing at the far end of the room was breathtaking in a way that defied easy description. Tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer like liquid starlight, the alien possessed features that were both familiar and utterly foreign. Humanoid in basic structure, but refined in ways that suggested millennia of evolution beyond Earth's current stage. Their eyes were the most striking feature: deep violet pools that seemed to hold galaxies within them, ancient and knowing yet somehow warm. "Representative Nightingale," the being said, their voice carrying musical undertones that seemed to resonate directly in her chest. "I am Kepfer, chosen speaker of the Astral Covenant. It is an honor to meet you." Zara felt her professional composure waver slightly. She had prepared for many possible scenarios, but not for the alien to be so attractive. There was something about Kepfer's presence that seemed to pull at something deep within her, a magnetism that transcended species boundaries. "The honor is mine, Kepfer," she replied, proud that her voice remained steady. "On behalf of humanity, welcome to Earth." Kepfer's lips curved in what might have been a smile, revealing teeth that seemed to be made of polished pearl. "Your world is beautiful, Representative. We have observed it from afar for some time, watching your species grow and develop. You have achieved much in such a short span of time." "Thank you," Zara said, settling into her chair as Kepfer gracefully took the seat across from her. "Your message mentioned our world's security. I must admit that phrasing has caused some concern among our leaders." "Concern?" Kepfer's head tilted slightly, a gesture that was somehow both alien and endearing. "There is no need for concern, dear Zara. May I call you Zara? Formal titles seem unnecessary between friends." The way Kepfer said her name sent an unexpected shiver down Zara's spine. She found herself nodding before she could think better of it. "Of course, and please, tell me about these security concerns you mentioned." Kepfer leaned forward slightly, their violet eyes seeming to glow with inner light. "Your species stands at a crossroads, Zara. You have developed the technology to reach beyond your world, to touch the stars themselves. This is a momentous achievement, but it also carries great risk." "What kind of risk?" Zara asked, though she found herself more focused on the way Kepfer's voice seemed to caress each word. "The galaxy is vast and beautiful, but it is not empty." Kepfer explained, their expression growing serious. "There are forces that seek to exploit young civilizations, to take advantage of their inexperience and naivety. Predators that hunt among the stars, seeking worlds like yours to plunder. Zara felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with Kefir's magnetic presence. "Predators, the Shadow Syndicate," Kefir said, their voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "They are raiders, slavers, destroyers of worlds. They have consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing but empty planets and scattered debris. And they are moving toward this sector of the galaxy." "How long do we have?" Zara asked, her diplomatic training kicking in despite her growing attraction to the alien across from her. "Perhaps a year, perhaps less," Kefir replied. "But there is hope. The Astral Covenant has developed methods of protection, ways to shield young civilizations from such threats. We have saved dozens of worlds from the Shadow Syndicate's hunger, and you're offering to help us?" Zara asked, though something in the back of her mind whispered that she should be asking different questions. "We are indeed," Kefir said, reaching across the table to place their hand gently over hers. Their skin was warm, almost electric to the touch, but such protection requires preparation. Your people would need to adapt certain aspects of your civilization to make them less appealing to raiders. "Adapt how?" Zara asked, finding it difficult to concentrate with Kefir's hand on hers. "Simple changes," Kefir assured her. "Certain cultural practices that attract attention, some of your more unique art forms, linguistic patterns that stand out to predators. We would help. You modify these things, make them more standard, safer." Zara blinked, something in Kefir's words penetrating the strange fog that seemed to surround her thoughts. "Whenever the alien spoke, 'You want us to change our culture, only the dangerous parts,' Kefir said smoothly, 'the parts that would make the Shadow Syndicate take notice. Think of it as camouflage, a way to hide in plain sight until your species is strong enough to defend itself." "And in return?" Zara asked, though she already suspected she knew the answer. "In return, the Astral Covenant would provide protection, guidance, and friendship to your people," Kefir said, their grip on her hand tightening slightly. "We would be honored to shepherd humanity into the galactic community." Zara stared into those violet eyes, feeling herself being drawn deeper into their depths. Everything Kefir said made sense, and yet something felt wrong. Not wrong about Kefir themselves, they were clearly sincere, clearly attracted to her as she was to them. But wrong about the situation. "I would need to consult with my government," Zara said finally. "This is a decision that affects all of humanity." "Of course," Kefir said, releasing her hand with obvious reluctance. "Take all the time you need. But please, do not take too long. The Shadow Syndicate does not wait for convenient timing." As Kefir stood to leave, they paused at the door. "Zara, I hope you will consider not just the political implications of our offer, but the personal ones as well. The galaxy is vast and lonely. It would be pleasant to have someone to share it with." After Kefir left, Zara sat alone in the conference room, her mind reeling. The aliens' offer seemed genuine, their concern for humanity's welfare appeared sincere, and the attraction between them was undeniable. But something nagged at her, a small voice in the back of her mind asking questions she wasn't sure she wanted to answer. Who exactly was this Shadow Syndicate? Why had she never heard of them before? And most importantly, why did Kefir's offer of protection feel less like salvation and more like a beautifully wrapped trap? As she gathered her notes and prepared to brief her superiors, Zara made a mental note to do some research of her own. After all, in her experience, the most dangerous predators were often the ones that came bearing gifts. The botanical research facility hummed with quiet efficiency as Marcus Reed carefully tended to his latest specimens, a collection of rare orchids that had taken him 3 years to cultivate. The greenhouse's climate-controlled environment provided the perfect sanctuary for both his plants and his thoughts, which had been considerably more turbulent since the alien delegation's arrival a week ago. "Fascinating," a melodious voice said from behind him, causing Marcus to nearly drop his watering can. "These organisms appear to have developed symbiotic relationships with multiple fungal networks simultaneously." Marcus turned to find himself face to face with one of the most beautiful beings he had ever seen, tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. The alien possessed features that were both ethereal and somehow familiar. Her eyes were the color of deep forest pools, and her long, silver hair seemed to move with a life of its own. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, setting down his watering can and wiping his hands on his apron. "I didn't hear you comin'. The greenhouse is supposed to be restricted during the diplomatic talks." "My apologies," the alien said, offering what appeared to be a genuine smile. "I am Silandra, cultural advisor to the Astral Covenant. I was given permission to explore your facility while the formal negotiations continue." "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," Marcus replied, finding himself oddly charmed by her presence. "I'm Marcus Reed, head botanist here. What brings you?" "To my little corner of the world. Curiosity," Silandra admitted, moving closer to examine the orchids. "Your species has developed such remarkable diversity in such a short evolutionary span. These flowers, for instance, they're not just beautiful. They're ingeniously adapted to their environment." Marcus felt a flush of pride. "Orchids are my specialty. Each species has evolved unique strategies for survival and reproduction. This one here," he said, pointing to a particularly exotic specimen, "can only be pollinated by a single species of moth that emerges for just 2 weeks each year." "Remarkable," Silandra breathed, leaning closer to examine the flower. Her proximity sent an unexpected thrill through Marcus's chest. Such specificity suggests a very stable ecosystem. "Your world must be quite safe." Something in her tone made Marcus pause. "Safe from disruption," Silandra clarified quickly. "These relationships take millennia to develop. They're very fragile, easily destroyed by outside influences." Marcus studied her face, noting the slight tension around her eyes. "Is that what you're here to protect us from? Outside influences?" Silandra's expression grew troubled. "The Shadow Syndicate has a particular interest in worlds with unique biological diversity. They harvest such things for their collectors." "Harvest?" Marcus's voice sharpened. "What do you mean, harvest?" "They take specimens," Silandra said softly. "Entire ecosystems, sometimes. They have ways of preserving them, displaying them. Wealthy collectors throughout the galaxy pay enormous sums for rare biological samples." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "And you think they're coming here? It's not just possible." "Marcus, it's inevitable," Silandra said, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Unless we can make your world less attractive to them." "How?" Marcus asked, though he had a sinking feeling he knew where this was going. "Standardization," Silandra explained. "If we can modify your ecosystems to be more similar to common galactic norms, they'll be less likely to draw attention. We have techniques for genetic modification that could accomplish this with minimal disruption." Marcus stared at her in horror. "You want to change our plants, our entire biosphere?" "Only the most unique aspects," Silandra said quickly. "The things that would make collectors take notice. We could preserve samples, of course, but the wild populations would need to be adjusted." "That's not protection," Marcus said, his voice rising. "That's destruction. You're talking about wiping out millions of years of evolution to save your species," Silandra insisted, her forest green eyes pleading. "Marcus, please understand, I've seen what the Shadow Syndicate does to worlds they target. They don't just take samples. They strip entire planets bare, leaving nothing but dead rot behind." Marcus wanted to believe her. Looking into her eyes, he could see genuine concern, real fear for what might happen to Earth. But the scientist in him was asking uncomfortable questions. "Silandra," he said carefully, "how do you know so much about this Shadow Syndicate? How do you know their methods, their preferences?" For just a moment, Silandra's composed expression flickered. "We've encountered them before, studied their patterns." "Studied them how?" Marcus pressed. "Have you fought them, defeated them?" "We've observed them," Silandra said, her voice becoming uncertain, "from a safe distance." "So you've never actually stopped them," Marcus realized. "You've just watched them destroy other worlds." Silandra's silence was answer enough. Marcus stepped back, his mind racing. "If you can't stop them, if you can only watch, then what kind of protection are you really offering?" "We can hide you," Silandra said desperately. "Make your world unremarkable enough that they'll pass by without stopping, by destroying everything. That makes us unique," Marcus said, "by turning Earth into just another generic planet." It's better than being dead, Silandra snapped, then immediately looked stricken by her own words. Marcus stared at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. Beneath the beauty, beneath the concern, there was something else. Something that looked almost like guilt. Silandra, he said quietly. What aren't you telling me? She turned away, unable to meet his eyes. I can't, I shouldn't, please, Marcus said, reaching out to touch her shoulder. Whatever it is, I want to help, but I need to understand what's really happening here. Silandra's composure cracked, and Marcus saw tears or something like tears forming in her eyes. The Shadow Syndicate, she whispered. They're not just raiders, Marcus. They're us. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. What? The Astral Covenant, Silandra said, her voice breaking. We are the Shadow Syndicate. We've been using that identity for millennia, creating fear to make young civilizations more compliant. Marcus felt the world spinning around him. You're the ones who've been destroying planets, not destroying, Silandra said quickly. We don't kill entire populations. We just take what we need. Cultural artifacts, genetic samples, unique species, things that are valuable to collectors throughout the galaxy. You're thieves, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Everything you've told us has been a lie. No, Silandra said, turning to face him with desperate eyes. My feelings for you are real, Marcus. What we have is real, and the protection we're offering is real too. We're offering to protect you from us. Marcus stared at her, seeing the alien he had been falling for in an entirely new light. Why? He asked. Why reveal this to me? Because I can't lie to you anymore, Silandra said, reaching out to touch his face. Because what I feel for you is stronger than anything I've ever experienced. Because maybe, just maybe, there's a better way. As Marcus looked into her eyes, he saw truth there, painful, complicated truth. Silandra was part of a species that had been preying on others for millennia. But she was also someone who had fallen in love with both him and his world. Someone who was willing to risk everything to find a different path. What do we do now? He asked quietly. I don't know, Silandra admitted. But I know we have to do something. Because if we don't, your world will be just another trophy in our collection. And I can't let that happen. Not to you. Not to this beautiful, impossible planet you call home. The linguistics laboratory was a chaos of holographic displays and floating text as Nina Vasquez worked late into the night, her dark eyes scanning endless streams of data. She had been analyzing the communication protocols used by the Astral Covenant, searching for patterns that might reveal more about their true intentions. What she had discovered was far more disturbing than she had ever imagined. Working late again. Nina, a familiar voice said from the doorway. Nina looked up to see Turan, the alien negotiator who had been assigned as her counterpart in the cultural exchange discussions. With skin like polished obsidian and eyes that seemed to hold starlight, Turan was undeniably beautiful and undeniably dangerous. Nina was beginning to realize. Someone has to, Nina replied, not bothering to hide her suspicion, especially when the people we're supposed to be trusting keep changing their story. Turan's expression didn't change, but Nina caught a flicker of something concern, fear, in those stellar eyes. What do you mean? I mean, Nina said, calling up a holographic display of linguistic patterns, that your people have been very careful about the language they use, almost too careful. She highlighted several phrases from the recorded conversations. Look at this every time you or your colleagues describe this Shadow Syndicate. You use the same exact phrasing, not similar phrasing, identical, down to the syllable structure and tonal inflections. Turan moved closer, studying the display. Perhaps we're simply consistent in our descriptions. Or perhaps, Nina said, you're all reading from the same script. She pulled up another set of data. I've been analyzing the metadata from your communications. The translation algorithms you're using are incredibly sophisticated, far more advanced than anything we have. Is that surprising? Turan asked. We are a more advanced civilization, advanced enough to create perfect false identities, Nina asked, meeting Turan's gaze directly. Because that's what this is, isn't it? The Shadow Syndicate isn't just your enemy, they're your creation. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, Turan sighed, a sound like wind through crystal caves. How long have you known? She asked quietly. I suspected from the beginning, Nina admitted. The story was too convenient, too perfectly crafted to push all the right psychological buttons. But I wanted to believe it was real. I wanted to believe you were real. I am real, Turan said, her voice carrying an edge of desperation. What I feel for you is real, Nina. Everything else may be performance. But this is truth. Nina stood up, facing the alien who had become so much more than just a diplomatic contact. Then tell me the truth, all of it. Turan's composure cracked, and Nina saw something vulnerable beneath the polished exterior. The Astral Covenant has been practicing this deception for over 10,000 years. We identify young civilizations, create a fictional threat, and offer protection in exchange for what we really want: unique cultural artifacts, genetic samples, technologies. You're con artists, Nina said, though there was no accusation in her voice, only sadness. We're survivors, Turan corrected. Our home world was depleted long ago. We've had to become adaptive, nomadic. We take what we need to continue existing. And humanity is just the latest mark, Nina said. You were supposed to be, Turan admitted. But something went wrong. The moment I met you, heard your voice, saw how your mind worked, I couldn't go through with it. Nina felt her heart racing. What do you mean? I mean, I've been sabotaging my own people's mission, Turan said. Stepping closer, I've been feeding them false information about your psychological profiles, making it seem like you're more suspicious than you actually are. Buying time. Time for what? Time to find another way, Turan said, reaching out to touch Nina's hand. Time to convince my people that maybe, just maybe, there's more value in honest partnership than in deception. Nina stared at their intertwined fingers, human and alien, two species that should have been impossible together. And if you can't convince them, then we run, Turan said simply. I'll help you expose the truth to your people, and we'll face the consequences together. Nina felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth spreading through her body that had nothing to do with the laboratory's climate controls. You'd give up everything for me, for us. Everything I have now is built on lies, Turan said. What we have is the first real thing I've experienced in centuries. Yes, I'd give up everything for that. Before Nina could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the laboratory in red, and the building's security system activated. What's happening? Nina asked, but Turan was already moving toward the communication console. They know, Turan said, her fingers flying over the alien interface. My people know I've been compromising the mission. They're activating the contingency protocol. What contingency protocol? Nina asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. If a world proves too difficult to con peacefully, Turan said, her voice grim, we take what we want by force. They're calling. In the fleet, Nina felt the blood drain from her face. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less, Turan said. Nina, I need you to contact your government immediately. Warn them that everything we've told you is a lie. The protection we offered, the threats we described, all of it was designed to make you compliant. What about you? Nina asked, grabbing Turan's arm as she headed for the door. What happens to you when your people find out you've betrayed them? Turan's smile was sad but determined. That depends on whether your species is as clever as I think you are. Because if you are, then maybe we can turn this situation to our advantage. How? By giving the Astral Covenant exactly what they expect, Turan said. Let them think they're dealing with a primitive, frightened species. Let them believe their deception is working. And then we turn their own game against them, Nina finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. Exactly, Turan said. But we'll need to move fast, and we'll need to trust each other completely. Nina looked into Turan's starlight eyes and saw truth there, complicated, dangerous truth. But truth nonetheless. Then let's go save both our worlds. As they ran through the corridors of the facility, Nina couldn't help but marvel at the irony. The Astral Covenant had come to Earth expecting to find easy prey. But instead they had found something far more dangerous: humans who were willing to fight for what they loved, and aliens who were willing to betray their own people for the chance at something real. The game was about to begin. And Nina had a feeling that the Astral Covenant was about to learn that humans were far better at playing it than they had ever imagined. The engineering bay of the Orbital Defense Station buzzed with frantic activity as Ethan Cross worked alongside his team to implement the most audacious plan in human history. Holographic displays showed the approaching Astral Covenant fleet, dozens of ships converging on Earth's position, their elegant forms hiding predatory intent. "The modifications are complete," Ethan announced, wiping sweat from his brow. "All defense platforms are now broadcasting the fake signatures to their sensors. We'll appear to be a civilization that's barely achieved fusion power." "And the real defenses?" asked Valthara, the Astral Covenant engineer, who had become both his closest collaborator and, impossibly, the woman he was falling in love with. "Completely masked," Ethan replied, moving to stand beside her at the central console. "They'll see primitive missile systems and basic energy shields. They won't detect the gravitational wave cannons or the quantum entanglement mines." Valthara's bioluminescent patches pulsed with what Ethan had learned was nervousness. Her species displayed emotions through patterns of light beneath their translucent skin, and right now she was practically glowing with anxiety. "You're certain this will work?" she asked, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate directly in his bones. "As certain as I can be," Ethan said, reaching out to touch her hand. "But it depends on your people reacting exactly as you've predicted." Valthara's light patterns shifted to something warmer, more confident. "They will. The Astral Covenant has used the same tactics for millennia. They'll expect you to be terrified, desperate, willing to give them anything in exchange for protection. And instead, they'll find themselves in a trap 10,000 years in the making," Valthara said, her patterns now showing something that looked almost like savage satisfaction. "You have to understand, Ethan, my people have been doing this for so long, they've become arrogant. They can't conceive of a species that could outsmart them." Ethan studied her face, still amazed by the twist of fate that had brought them together. Valthara had been sent to Earth as part of the technical support team, tasked with helping to implement the cultural modifications that would make humanity less appealing to the fictional Shadow Syndicate. Instead, she had taken one look at human engineering and fallen in love both with their innovative approaches and with Ethan himself. "Incoming transmission," the communication officer announced. "Astral Covenant flagship requesting immediate audience with Earth's leadership." "Showtime," Ethan muttered, then activated the command channel. "All stations, remember we're supposed to be primitive and scared. Let them think they're in control." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Astral Covenant. Flagship Pelder Miser stood at the center, his red scales gleaming under the ship's lighting. Behind him, Ethan could see the familiar forms of Cesara and Lemire, the other members of the Covenant's ruling council. "People of Earth," Miser's voice carried across the void, translated by systems that were far more advanced than Earth was supposed to possess. "We bring grave news. The Shadow Syndicate has been detected moving toward your system. We must implement protective measures immediately." "What kind of measures?" came the reply from Earth's surface. President Martinez had been briefed on the plan, and her voice carried exactly the right note of frightened desperation. "Your planet must be adjusted," Cesara explained. "Certain aspects of your culture and biology make you appealing to raiders. We can modify these characteristics, but it will require significant cooperation from your people." "We'll do anything," Martinez replied. "Please, just tell us what you need." Ethan watched Valthara's light patterns shift to something like disgust. "Listen to them," she whispered. "They're enjoying this. They love the feeling of power, of having an entire species begging for their help." "The modifications will require samples," Lemire was saying. "Genetic material from your most unique species, examples of your most distinctive cultural artifacts, copies of your historical records. We'll need to analyze everything to determine what must be standardized." "Of course," Martinez agreed. "We gather everything you need. But please, tell us about this Shadow Syndicate. What do they want? How do they operate?" Ethan saw Miser's expression become almost predatory. "They are raiders, scavengers. They seek out worlds with unique characteristics and strip them bare. They have destroyed countless civilizations, leaving nothing but empty planets behind. How horrible, Martinez said, her voice shaking with perfectly performed terror. How long do we have? Perhaps days, Miser replied, but do not despair. The Astral Covenant has perfected methods of protection. We can hide your world from their sensors, make it appear unremarkable. All we require is your complete cooperation. You'll have it. Martinez promised. We'll begin gathering the samples. Immediately, the transmission ended, and Ethan felt a mixture of satisfaction and revulsion. The plan was working perfectly, but watching the Covenant's leaders manipulate humanity's supposed fear was deeply disturbing. They're so confident, Valthara said, her patterns now showing something like amazement. They have no idea what they're walking into. Speaking of which, Ethan said, checking his chronometer, we should move to the next phase. How long until your people send the collection teams? They'll want to appear generous, Valthara said. They'll give humanity a few hours to gather the requested materials, then send shuttles to collect them. It makes the Mark feel like they have some control over the situation. Perfect, Ethan said. Activating the ship-wide communication system. All teams, prepare for Phase 2. Remember, we need to make this look completely natural. Over the next several hours, Ethan watched as humanity performed the greatest deception in their history. Transport ships departed from every major city, carrying containers that appeared to hold humanity's most precious cultural artifacts and genetic samples. The Covenant sensors would detect exactly what they expected: a desperate species surrendering their heritage in exchange for protection. What they wouldn't detect was the true contents of those containers, or the weapons systems hidden within what appeared to be simple transport vessels. Covenant shuttles launching, the sensor officer reported. 12 vessels, heading for the rendezvous points. All ships, maintain positions. Ethan ordered, let them get close. We need them to believe they're in complete control. Valthara moved closer to him, her light patterns showing a mixture of anticipation and fear. Ethan, I need you to know if this goes wrong, if my people discover what I've done, they won't, Ethan said firmly, taking her hand. And even if they do, we'll face it together. You're not alone anymore, Valthara. You have a home here, with me, with all of us. Her patterns shifted to something warm and golden, and Ethan felt his heart skip a beat. Somehow, in the middle of planning humanity's defense against an ancient con game, he had found something he never expected to find: love that transcended species, that transcended the stars themselves. Covenant shuttles approaching the collection points, the sensor officer announced. They're hailing the transport ships. Let them make contact, Ethan said, and prepare to give the Astral Covenant the surprise of their very long lives. On the screens around them, the Covenant shuttles moved confidently toward what they believed were helpless human vessels. They had no idea that they were about to become the prey in a hunt that had been 10,000 years in the making. Ethan squeezed Valthara's hand, her skin warm and electric against his. Ready to watch your people learn what happens when they underestimate humanity. Valthara's patterns pulsed with something that might have been justice. I've been ready for this my entire life. The Astral Covenant command ship hummed with confusion as Elder Miser stared at the tactical displays in growing disbelief. What should have been a simple collection operation had become something else entirely, something that challenged everything he thought he knew about primitive civilizations. Report, he ordered, his red scales darkening with agitation. The human transport vessels have disappeared, Lemire said, his golden coloration flickering with uncertainty. Our shuttles reached the rendezvous points, but there was nothing there. No ships, no signals, no trace of their passage. Impossible, Cesara hissed, her blue scales pale with shock. We tracked them all the way from the surface. They can't simply vanish. Miser's secondary eyelids fluttered a stress response he hadn't experienced in centuries. What about the genetic samples? The cultural artifacts they promised? Sir, the sensor operator called out. We're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Something is disrupting our instruments. Before Miser could respond, the main screen flickered to life. The image that appeared was not President Martinez, as he had expected, but a collection of humans, and to his absolute shock, members of his own species. Greetings, Elder Miser, Zara Nightingale said. her voice carrying none of the fear he had come to expect from their marks. "I believe you know some of our friends." Beside her stood Kepher, his starlight skin dim with shame. "Elder Miser, I must inform you that the operation has been compromised. Humanity is not what we believed them to be." "What is the meaning of this?" Miser demanded. But even as he spoke, he felt the cold grip of realization beginning to take hold. "It means," said a new voice, "that the game is over." The view shifted to show Marcus Reed standing in what appeared to be a vast command center, his arm around Silandra. The cultural advisor's forest green eyes were bright with determination as she faced her former colleagues. "The humans know, Miser," she said. "They know about the Shadow Syndicate deception. They know about everything we've done. And they're not afraid," added Nina Vasquez, appearing alongside Turan. "In fact, they're rather impressed by our efficiency. They have a proposal." Miser felt his world shifting beneath him. "What kind of proposal?" "The kind that might save both our species," said Ethan Cross, his image appearing next to Velthara. "But first, let us show you what happens when you underestimate humanity." The screens around the Covenant command ship suddenly blazed with light. Energy signatures that had been invisible moments before revealed themselves as a massive defensive network surrounding Earth. Weapons platforms that should have been impossible for a pre-FTL civilization appeared from quantum stealth, their targeting systems already locked onto the Covenant fleet. "Gravitational wave cannons," Velthara explained, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with pride. "Quantum entanglement mines, spatial distortion fields. Humanity may be new to the galactic stage, but they're remarkably creative when it comes to defensive systems." "This is impossible," Miser whispered. "You're supposed to be primitive, barely capable of fusion power." "We are new to interstellar travel," Zera admitted. "But we've been preparing for this moment for longer than you might think. You see, Elder Miser, you weren't our first contact with the galaxy. You were simply the first to announce yourselves." The implications of her words sent ice through Miser's veins. "What do you mean?" "We mean," Marcus said, "that we've been watching you for years, studying your methods, your targets, your patterns. We knew you were coming long before you arrived." "The Shadow Syndicate," Nina added, "isn't just your creation, it's your weakness. Because every species you've contacted using this deception has eventually figured out the truth, and some of them have been very eager to share information with others." Miser's scales had gone completely dark. "You've been in contact with our previous targets, dozens of them," Ethan confirmed. "Turns out, there's nothing like a shared enemy to bring people together, even when that enemy is mostly imaginary." "So what now?" Cesara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you destroy us? Take revenge for all the worlds we've deceived, actually?" Zera said, her expression softening. "We have a better idea. Thanks to the insights provided by Kepher, Silandra, Turan, and Velthara, we've learned something important about the Astral Covenant." "Which is?" Miser asked. Though he dreaded the answer, "That you're not evil," Marcus said. "You're desperate. Your homeworld is dying. Your people are scattered. And you've been using these deceptions because you don't know any other way to survive." "But there is another way," Nina added. "Partnership, real partnership, not the fake protection racket you've been running." Ethan stepped forward, his hand firmly clasped in Velthara's. "Humanity is young, but we're adaptable. We're also curious about the galaxy beyond our solar system. We could use guides, teachers, friends who understand the complexities of interstellar civilization, and we could use a home," Kepher said quietly, "a place where we can be ourselves instead of playing roles in an endless con game." Miser stared at the screen, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. "You're offering us what exactly?" "Sanctuary," Zera said simply. "Partnership. A chance to build something real instead of surviving on lies, in exchange for." What Miser asked, his instincts telling him this was too good to be true, honesty. Silandra said, "Complete disclosure of your past activities, help in contacting and making reparations to the species you've deceived, and a promise that the Shadow Syndicate dies here, today, forever. And if we refuse," Limir asked, "then you leave," Tran said firmly. "We won't destroy you, but you won't be welcome in this part of the galaxy." The species you've contacted have been very clear about that. Miser looked around the command bridge, seeing the faces of his people confused, frightened, but also hopeful. They had been playing their roles for so long, they had forgotten what it felt like to be genuine. The council will need to vote, he said finally. Of course, Zara agreed. But while you're deciding, perhaps you'd like to see what we're offering. The screen shifted to show Earth from orbit, but not the primitive world the Covenant had expected. Cities that gleamed with advanced technology, space elevators reaching toward the stars, and most remarkably, ships bearing the insignia of dozens of different species. They're already here, Ethan explained. Representatives from every world. The Astral Covenant has contacted over the past 1,000 years. They've come to witness the end of the Shadow Syndicate and the beginning of something new. A real galactic alliance, Nina added, based on mutual respect and honest cooperation. Miser felt something stir in his chest that he hadn't experienced. In Millennia Hope, and our people who have chosen to stay with humanity are welcome to make their own choices, Marcus said, his arm tightening around Silandra. Love doesn't recognize species barriers, neither does friendship, Zara added. Smiling at Kethfer, or trust, Nina said, her hand finding Tyrannas. Or the future we're building together, Ethan finished, his eyes bright with possibilities. Mizir looked at his advisors, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their faces. They were tired of running, tired of lying, tired of being the villains in someone else's story. Very well, he said finally. The Astral Covenant accepts your proposal, but I have one condition. Which is, Zara asked, that we be allowed to attend the weddings, Miser said, his scales brightening for the first time in centuries. After all, it's been a very long time since we've had something genuine to celebrate. As laughter echoed across the communication channels, bridging the gap between species and civilizations, Miser realized that humanity had given his people something far more valuable than anything they had ever stolen: a chance to be authentic, to build instead of deceive, to love instead of fear. The Shadow Syndicate was dead, but from its ashes, something beautiful was being born, and for the first time in his very long life, Miser was looking forward to tomorrow. 6 months later, the wedding ceremony took place on a space station, jointly constructed by human and Covenant engineers, with representatives from across the galaxy in attendance. As Zara and Kethfer exchanged vows, followed by Marcus and Silandra, Nina and Turan, and Ethan and Velthara, the assembled crowd witnessed something unprecedented: the birth of a truly interstellar civilization built on love, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable. The galaxy would never be the same, and everyone agreed that was exactly as it should be.